My debit card declined on the cheapest cup of ramen in the store. Not a meal, not groceries. Just one plain cup from the bottom shelf, the kind I bought when rent was close and payday still felt far away. Clerk looked at the register, then looked at me like I had walked in after the rules had already changed. Behind me someone sighed. The fluorescent lights hummed above us, too bright for how hungry I was. I tapped the card again. Declined. My phone said my balance was 0. For a moment I thought the banking app had crashed. I refreshed it, checked the account, checked the number again, because numbers were the one thing I trusted. I had survived for years by counting them carefully. But every number was gone. The clerk tapped the counter. In a shallow tray beside his hand sat a small clear marble. "1 clear," he said. I stared at him. He repeated it not like he was explaining a new system, but like he was warning a slow customer. 1 clear. The words hit harder than they should have. I had been called cheap, strange, quiet, useless. But this was different. This was the world itself saying I could not afford survival. The ramen price tag no longer showed yen. It showed a white circle and the words 1 clear. The drinks had red circles. Bags of rice had green. The locked cabinet near the front had blue tags beneath the glass. A woman at the next register dropped 2 clear marbles into a tray and took bottled water. Delivery worker paid with 1 red and received several clears back like change. No one laughed. That made it worse. If this were a prank, someone would have smiled too early. If it were a machine error, the clerk would have blamed the register. Instead, the line behind me shifted with the impatience of people who already knew the rule. Money was gone. Marbles worked. My fingers closed around the old marble keychain in my pocket. I had carried it for years because I liked the way glass held light. My coworkers called it childish. My boss, Daichi Kuroda, once lifted it during a meeting and asked if I planned to pay rent with toys. Back then, everyone laughed. Now the clerk's eyes dropped to my hand. For the first time that night, someone looked at me with interest. I did not take the keychain out. I did not know enough yet. I stepped away from the counter without the ramen, and the man behind me moved forward before I had fully turned. He placed 1 clear into the tray. The register chimed. That sound followed me into the night. 1 clear. The price of food, the price of being normal, the price of not being left behind. And as I walked home with an empty stomach and a dead bank account, one thought became sharper than the shame. If 1 clear marble could buy ramen, then what were the marbles in my closet worth? Before that night, my life was built around small numbers. Train fare, rent, utility bills. Discounted lunch sets after 2 in the afternoon. The difference between instant noodles from the convenience store and a bag of dry noodles from the market near the station. I wrote everything down because forgetting cost money. And when you were poor, every mistake became proof that people like Kuroda were right about you. Daichi Kuroda was my supervisor at Shuranami Data Services. He never needed to shout. He understood that embarrassment worked better when the room was quiet enough to hear it. If a report had 1 formatting error, he placed it on my desk upside down and asked if I had learned to read yet. If a client changed requirements after I submitted a clean file, he called it Ren's latest adventure in confusion. The others laughed because laughing was safer than being next. I learned not to react. That was my first real skill. I could keep my face still while my ears burned. I could answer with a short yes, Kuroda-san, while counting the seconds until he got bored. They mistook silence for emptiness. Hana Mori did not. Hana was an accounting temp who worked 2 rows away during payroll cleanup. She had a habit of checking numbers like they were suspects. The first time she noticed me, Kuroda had blamed me for a payroll mismatch that would have reduced 3 people's overtime. I had not caused it, but in that office, speaking first often counted as being right. Hana checked the approval chain twice. Then she said the change happened after Ren submitted. The adjustment came from your account, Kuroda-san. The room went quiet. Kuroda smiled and called it a technicality, but Hana looked at me afterward. Not with pity, with measurement. At home, I kept a different ledger. 3 shelves stood in my closet, lined with black felt cases. Inside were marbles sorted by color, flaw, size, purchase source, and date. Clear ones with tiny air bubbles, red ones with a warm core, green ones that turned smoky in sunlight, blue ones that looked like deep water. And purple. Purple marbles were my weakness, not because they were rare. Back then, nobody wanted them. Collectors called the color muddy. Store owners dumped them in bulk bins. I bought them cheap from estate sales, closing toy shops, online auctions, and old hobby forums. Kuroda once found a shipping receipt on my desk and asked why I kept buying useless glass. I told him I liked the way they looked. He said that was exactly the kind of answer he expected from a man with no future. I did not argue. Arguing would only teach him that the marbles mattered enough to hurt me with. So I kept counting, I kept cataloging. I kept spending a little of what I did not have on objects that gave me order when everything else belonged to someone louder. The evening my card declined, I had already been laughed at twice, underpaid once, and told by Kuroda that even the new interns looked more alive than I did. All I wanted was 1 hot meal. Instead, the old world died at the register. And the strangest part was this. The thing everyone called worthless was the only thing I still owned in abundance. After I stepped away from the counter, I did not leave the store immediately. I stood near the magazine rack, pretending to check my phone while my stomach twisted. The clerk had already stopped watching me. To him, I was one more person who had failed to adapt, but I needed to understand what failure meant now. Price board above the hot food display flickered. For one breath, old numbers appeared, then they dissolved into colored circles. Clear for small things, a rice ball, bottled water, the cheapest ramen. Red for comfort, hot meals, good coffee, medicine behind the counter. Green for weekly groceries, transit cards and household supplies. Blue for serious goods, phones, appliances, emergency deposits. The store had become a classroom, and hunger made me pay attention. A student tried to pay with a transportation card. The cashier shook her head before it touched the scanner. An old man stared at paper bills as if they had become souvenirs. A rich-looking man in a pressed coat had no marbles and suddenly looked poor. Delivery worker with dust on his jacket had 3 reds and a handful of clears, and people moved aside when he stepped forward. Old status had not disappeared. It had been replaced before anyone got to vote. My banking app updated again. A banner filled the screen. All legacy balances have been converted under the Marbles standard. No apology. No button that returned my rent money. Below it was a guide. A clear marble represented $1 of basic exchange value. Red represented 10. Green represented 100. Blue represented 1,000. Then the guide glitched. For less than a second, a 5th line appeared beneath blue. Purple Pinnacle classification. Restricted authentication required. Then the screen refreshed and the line vanished. My heart kicked against my ribs. Purple. I looked at the clear marble in the clerk's tray. Then at the red marbles in the delivery worker's palm. Then at the blue tag on the locked cabinet. Colors, material, recognition. The world was no longer asking for numbers in a bank. It wanted physical objects that could be counted, sorted, faked, verified. That was not Kuroda's world. That was a collector's world. I pulled the scratched marble keychain from my pocket just enough to see it, then stopped. A desperate man spends first and thinks later. A collector checks condition before touching the display. I left the store hungry, but not empty. Outside, people gathered under public screens. Storefront signs updated in color. Vending machine refused digital payment until a boy dropped a clear marble into a slot that had not been there that morning. The marble standard was not local. It was not a glitch. It was everywhere. My apartment was 28 minutes away if I walked fast. 16 if I ran in office shoes and did not care how pathetic I looked. I ran. With every step, one phrase followed me. One clear. It had been an insult at the counter. Now it was a unit of measurement. One clear for ramen. Hundreds of clears in my closet. And somewhere behind a vanished line of text, purple. My apartment had never looked expensive before. That night, every cheap thing inside it looked like a hiding place. Narrow closet, the plastic bins under the bed, the black felt cases stacked beneath an old sheet, exactly where they had always been. I locked the door, closed the curtains, pulled the first case onto the floor, and opened my ledger. The clear marbles came first, 532. Till that night, that number had meant nothing except a neat row in my collection records. Now it meant food, train fare, and never again standing helpless over one cup of ramen. The red case held 1,032. The green case held 382. The blue case held 249. I sat back after counting the blue. Blue meant serious value. Enough to clear debts, enough to pay rent far ahead, enough to walk into the office cafeteria and buy anything there without checking the price. That should have been the miracle. But behind the labeled cases were the old bulk boxes. Purple. Purple marbles in foam trays, purple marbles in plastic sleeves, purple marbles wrapped in newspaper from estate sales. Some were smoky, some held bright veins, some looked almost black until light touched the rim and violet fire appeared along the edge. The marbles nobody wanted. The marbles I bought because I knew ignored things could still be beautiful. My hands moved automatically. Case number, row number, purchase date, flaw mark, cross-check against ledger. 8,473 purple marbles. I searched every public notice, every leaked screenshot, every forum thread that had not yet been deleted. The same phrase appeared again and again. Pinnacle Marble, estimated old dollar equivalent, 10 million each. Authentication required through official exchange gate. Holder identity subject to destabilization review. Do not attempt unverified conversion. I sat on the floor surrounded by black felt cases while the numbers assembled themselves. 8,473 multiplied by 10 million. That was not wealth, that was a country hiding in my closet. For a few dangerous seconds, I imagined Kuroda's face. I imagined walking into his office and dropping one purple marble on his desk. I imagined buying the building and asking him to repeat every joke while the whole company watched. The thought felt good, too good. That scared me more than the money. Warning remained on my screen. Authentication created a record. Large holder review could apply. Market stability controls could restrict access. Power had found me, but it had arrived with a collar already waiting. So I did what I had always done. I counted. I separated lower colors from purple. I photographed each case. I backed up the ledgers. I moved a small number of clear, red, green, and blue marbles into an old coin pouch and hid the purple cases under the loose floor panel beneath my bed. I did not sleep. dawn, I returned to the same convenience store and bought the ramen I had left behind. I paid with one clear. Clerk recognized me only after the validation pad flashed confirmed. His eyes dropped to the pouch in my hand. I said nothing. The ramen tasted like salt, cardboard, and victory. But I did not use a purple, not yet. First, I needed proof in a place where everyone had already decided what I was. The office cafeteria opened at noon. By lunch, the office had become a marketplace, wearing business clothes. Nobody cared about project timelines. People cared about marbles, who had them, who did not, which colors counted, whether rent would accept green or demand blue. Cafeteria prices had changed overnight. Coffee cost clear, a normal lunch tray cost red. Better meal sets had green tags, which made half the room stare as if they belonged in a museum. I stood near the end of the line with a small pouch in my pocket. Kuroda saw me and smiled. Aoki, he said loudly, are you sure you can afford to stand there? I hear noodles cost one clear now. That may be difficult for a man whose retirement plan is a toy box. A few coworkers laughed from habit. Not loudly, the world had changed too much for full confidence, but the sound was still there, thin and familiar. I looked at the cashier's tray. Beside it sat unpaid meal slips from workers whose old cards had failed that morning. Janitor, 2 junior staff, a cafeteria assistant who looked like she wanted to vanish. Kuroda mistook my silence for defeat. No shame in stepping out of line, he said. Well, some shame, but less than holding everyone else up. I reached into my pouch. The room changed before I even pulled the marble out. Glass touched glass and conversations faded. I placed one blue marble on the tray. Not clear, not red, blue. The cafeteria lights caught it, and the entire room leaned forward. The cashier froze. Sir, this is too much for one lunch. Then clear the unpaid slips, I said. All of them. Put whatever remains into the staff meal fund. No speech, no revenge line. Just one blue marble resting in a metal tray. The validation pad flashed confirmed. One by one, the unpaid slips were stamped settled. The cleaning woman covered her mouse. One junior employee whispered my name like he was trying it for the first time. Coworkers turned toward my old keychain and counted the colors with their eyes. Kuroda did not laugh. That was my first real payoff. Not the food, not the money, the silence. For one breath, the room that had always known, where I belonged, did not know what to do with me. Then Kuroda smiled again. It was not the smile he used when humiliating me. This one was slower, hungrier. Aoki, he said, it seems you have been keeping secrets. Hana stood 2 tables away with a tray in her hands. She looked at the blue marble, then at me, then at Kuroda. She did not look impressed, she looked worried. That bothered me more than I wanted it to. I took my noodles and sat alone. 4 people avoided me because I was easy to mock. Now they avoided me because they were recalculating the cost of being wrong. Part of me wanted to pull out another blue, then another, until everyone understood that they had been laughing at someone who could buy their apologies by the kilogram. Instead, I ate slowly. The blue marble was gone. My purple reserve remained hidden. That was discipline, I told myself. But when I looked up and saw Kuroda still watching me, I understood the first rule of my new life. Once value became visible, the world did not apologize. It reached for you. Kuroda waited less than 1 day before trying to own what he had mocked. He did not ask for marbles directly, that would have been too honest. Instead, he scheduled a compliance meeting. Invitation arrived with copied managers, 1 human resources officer, and a subject line so boring it was obviously dangerous. Review of potential company asset misclassification. By noon, I sat in a glass conference room while Kuroda placed printed pages in front of me like evidence at a trial. Storage logs, expense forms, old inventory requests, a photo of my marble keychain beside company supplies. We are not accusing you, Kuroda said, which meant he was. Given the new legal importance of marble assets, we must investigate whether any portion of your collection was acquired, stored, or cataloged using company time or property. I stared at the photo. It was from an office event 2 years earlier. I remembered that day because Kuroda had made the same toy joke, and I had written the date in my ledger after going home angry. Back then, the ledger had been comfort. Now it was evidence. Kuroda folded his hands. If company resources contributed to the asset, the company may have partial claim. We simply need transparency. Transparency from a man who changed deadlines verbally and smiled when people lost overtime. My first instinct was to crush him with value. Offer to buy the department. Offer to pay everyone's salary if they admitted what he was doing. I felt the temptation rise like heat. Then Hana entered without knocking. She carried a tablet and wore the expression of someone who had checked the numbers twice. This meeting was not copied to accounting, she said. Kuroda's smile tightened. It concerns personnel conduct. The reference is expense claims. That makes it accounting. She placed her tablet on the table. The storage log Kuroda cited had been edited that morning. The inventory form he implied connected to my marble cases originally referred to toner cartridges. The office photo had no asset relevance at all. Hana looked at me. Do you have purchase records? Yes. All of them. Most in ledgers for the rest. Dates, sources, flaws, case numbers. For the first time, the human resources officer looked interested. Kuroda leaned back, convenient. Hana did not blink. Consistent, there is a difference. The meeting did not end with full victory. Kuroda withdrew the strongest claims, softened the rest into an internal review, and pretended cooperation had been his goal. But the room had seen his paperwork bled. That mattered. Afterward, Hana caught me near the stairwell. Do not bring high-value marbles here again, she said. I know. No, you do not. You think this is still about Kuroda being embarrassed. It is not. People are talking. She showed me a forum thread. Unknown office worker pays cafeteria debt with blue. Possible hidden holder. Keychain collector. Any purple confirmation. One username appeared again and again. Blue Vault Scout. Hana lowered her voice. The Blue Vault Collector Guild tracks rare holders. If they think you have purple, they will not wait for proof. That night I moved the purple cases again, split locations, photographed seals, and hid a second ledger inside an old recipe book because nobody who knew me would believe I cooked. By midnight, the first anonymous message arrived. We know you have more than blue. The second came 10 minutes later. Blue Vault can protect you before the exchange notices. The third was shorter. Do not authenticate purple alone. I sat in the dark and understood that Kuroda was no longer the largest problem in my life. He was only the first person close enough to reach. The Central Marble Exchange noticed me 3 days later. The notice appeared on every screen I owned at exactly 8 in the morning. Holder classification review requested. Attendance required at Exchange Gate 7. Failure to respond may restrict future authentication rights. Requested meant required. Hana read it over my shoulder and said, do not go alone. I was not planning to tell you. That is why I am telling you not to go alone. Exchange Gate 7 had been a bank branch before the world changed. Reinforced glass now covered the doors, and validation counters replaced the old ATM wall. People lined up clutching pouches, jars, jewelry boxes, and anything else that could hold marbles. Clear holders looked desperate, red holders looked nervous, green holders looked guarded, blue holders had security near them. Above us, a black screen displayed one line. Value must be authenticated to be protected. It sounded reasonable until you understood the trap. Authentication meant record, record meant classification, classification meant control. We were taken past the public counters into a private room where Director Seiji Kanzaki waited with a folder already open. He was younger than I expected, calm in a way that felt manufactured. His suit was simple, his voice was gentle. Nothing about him needed to threaten me, because the building did it for him. Aoki Ren, he said, collector, private holder, employee of Shiranami Data Services, recent blue-class public transaction, possible exposure to rare-class rumors. Hana sat beside me. Rumors are not evidence. Kanzaki smiled. Correct, but markets do not wait for evidence before reacting. He slid a purple marble across the table. Not mine, the flaw pattern was wrong. A thin silver vein crossed the center like lightning. Still, my body reacted before my face could stop it. Kanzaki noticed. Most citizens believe purple is simply a high-value class, he said. 10 million old dollars per authenticated Pinnacle Marble. That is incomplete. The room seemed to shrink. Pinnacle Marbles are not only currency, they are voting keys. Each authenticated Pinnacle holder carries weighted influence over Marble's standard policies, authentication thresholds, freeze procedures, conversion ratios, emergency stabilization orders. Purple was not money. Purple was law wearing the shape of money. How many exist? I asked. Kanzaki's eyes sharpened. Enough to govern, not enough to ignore concentration risk. Hana leaned forward, and if someone owns many, and that person may become a destabilizing holder. For their protection and the market's protection, review measures may apply. Freeze orders, Hana said. Temporary safeguards. Seizure. Kanzaki's smile did not move. Only in cases of fraud, counterfeit risk, unlawful acquisition, or public stability threat. Every phrase was a door he could lock from the other side. He offered voluntary disclosure and guided protection. In simpler words, tell us what you have before someone else does. For a moment, the safest path was obvious. Spend only lower colors, hide the purple. Let the world tear itself apart while I protected my cases. Then I remembered the old man at the store, staring at useless paper bills. The student crying into a dead phone. Cleaning woman in the cafeteria, covering her mouth when her unpaid meal slip was stamped settled. The marble standard had made me powerful, but it had made millions helpless at the same time. As we left, Hana said, if you only use this to protect yourself, they will eventually own you anyway. I looked at the line of people waiting with tiny pouches of clear marbles. For years, I had wanted proof that I was not worthless. Now I had proof so large, the government wanted to measure it. And I had never felt less free. The first purple marble I authenticated was not for revenge. It was for rent. Not mine. 3 days after Kanzaki's warning, Shiranami announced payroll adjustments under the marble standard. The language was clean. Legacy overtime would be reviewed. Converted balances would be delayed. Temporary staff would receive provisional credits after verification. For managers, it was an inconvenience. For people near the bottom, it was eviction. Hana showed me the list without asking permission to be angry. 37 workers in company-linked housing had rent due within 48 hours. Cleaning staff, data entry temps, night maintenance. people who kept the building running, while managers practiced concern in conference rooms. Kuroda claimed his hands were tied. Hana proved the delay was selective. Executive reserves had already been converted into green and blue security, while lower workers remained trapped behind old balance reviews. Legally, maybe the company could defend it. Morally, it was theft with letterhead. The old Ren would have lowered his eyes and hated himself for being unable to help. The new Ren could help. That was the problem. Blue could buy time for a few. Purple could solve the whole housing block. But the landlord required exchange-cleared high-class settlement. That meant authentication. That meant exposure. Hana stood in my apartment, looking at the black felt case open on my table. "Do not do this because you want Kuroda to watch," she said. The words hit because I had imagined exactly that. His face when the notices became settled. The workers thanking me while he stood useless beside them. Everyone finally seeing who had value and who only had a title. "Then why should I do it?" I asked. Hana's voice softened, but only a little. "Because you remember what one clear felt like." That decided me. Exchange Gate 7 authenticated the purple under 3 cameras, 2 guards, and 1 silent official who treated the marble like it was more dangerous than a weapon. When the validation seal flashed Pinnacle confirmed, the entire room went still. I authorized settlement for the housing block, emergency credits for affected workers, and legal notice against the company-linked landlord. 1 purple was absurdly more than enough. In this world, enough was not the issue. Visibility was. The workers found out before the company could bury it. Maintenance man bowed so low I wanted to disappear. The cleaning woman from the cafeteria cried openly. Online boards exploded. Office loser saves workers with purple. Hero holder. Market threat. Hoarder confirmed. Kuroda arrived late, pale with rage he had not prepared a smile to hide. "You have no idea what you have done," he said. For once I agreed with him. That night a projected silver strip appeared across my apartment door. Audit hold initiated. Partial asset freeze pending destabilizing holder review. My lower color pouch still worked. Some of my blue access did not. Any attempt to authenticate additional purple required review clearance. I stood in the hallway while neighbors pretended not to stare. The seal made my home look like a crime scene. Hana read the notice, then looked at me. Was it worth it? I wanted to say yes immediately. The workers were safe. Kuroda had been exposed. The world had seen that I was not a joke. But I had also enjoyed part of it for the wrong reason. I had wanted the room to watch me become powerful. So I answered honestly. "I do not know yet." Hana nodded like that was the first answer she could respect. Behind the audit seal, my apartment held enough purple glass to shake the world. Outside it, the world had finally started shaking back. After the freeze order, I stopped thinking of marbles as treasure. Treasure makes you want to guard it. Rules make you ask who wrote them. For 3 nights, Hana and I turned my apartment into a war room. No weapons, no banners. It was cheap coffee, printed regulations, ledgers, receipts, screenshots, worker statements, and every public marble standard notice we could find. The exchange assumed I would panic like a sudden rich man. That was their mistake. I had never been sudden anything. I read the rules the way I read flaws in glass. Slowly under light from more than one angle. Authentication law required proof of physical possession and lawful acquisition. I had purchase records dating back years before the marble standard. My ledgers showed case numbers, flaw patterns, and source notes that no forger could invent afterward. Even the purple marbles had tiny variations I documented when they were worthless. The freeze order claimed market instability, but it leaned on an assumption that my holdings were unverified and possibly concentrated through fraud. They were concentrated because everyone else had ignored them. That was not fraud. That was arrogance meeting a ledger. Hana traced Kuroda's paperwork attack through edits, false implications, and one deleted message proving he searched company policy after my cafeteria payment, not before. She did not let me celebrate too early. "Winning against Kuroda is not enough," she said. "If the exchange can freeze anyone by calling them unstable, then your case becomes a warning, not a victory." She was right. So we widened the fight. Not by buying followers. I could have done that too easily. Few green marbles here, 1 blue there, and loyalty would start calling itself gratitude. I needed witnesses, not worshippers. The contract workers gave statements. Small shop owners described conversion delays. Nurse described patients trying to pay medical costs with dead bank cards while hospitals waited for exchange clearance. Even a junior employee from my floor admitted Kuroda had encouraged people to call me unstable after the blue transaction. Every story had the same shape. The marble standard claimed to recognize value, but the people who controlled authentication controlled survival. Then the Blue Vault Collector Guild made its move. They invited me to a private restaurant and offered protection, legal support, storage facilities, and a public narrative that would make me look responsible. In exchange, they wanted management rights over my purple inventory. Not ownership, they said. Stewardship. Kuroda used company policy. Kanzaki used market stability. The guild used elegance. Everyone wanted the same thing. Ike says. One representative leaned close and said, Aoki, you are not built for this world. Let those of us who understand value protect it. That was when I knew I would refuse. I recognized the sentence. Kuroda had said it with cheaper words for years. I placed a printed section of Marbles' standard governance code on the table. Verified concentration holder could challenge review through public rule petition if the petition concerned authentication transparency, anti-seizure limits, or holder rights. The guild representatives stopped smiling. By morning, I filed the petition. If the exchange wanted to call me destabilizing, I would force them to say it in public. And if purple marbles were voting keys, I would use mine for more than proving I was rich. The public review was held in the old Metropolitan Assembly Hall. Officially, the exchange building could not contain the crowd. Really, Kanzaki wanted cameras, polished desks, serious seals, and the feeling that order itself sat behind him. Kuroda sat to the left with company counsel, wearing the face of a man who had practiced looking betrayed. The Blue Vault Collector Guild sat to the right, elegant and wounded, as if my refusal had insulted civilization. Hana sat behind me with 4 binders, 2 tablets, and no patience for anyone's performance. I sat at the center table with my old marble ledger. Scuffed corners, handwritten dates, color tabs from back when the whole thing was only a hobby people mocked. Kanzaki opened with calm disaster language. He described market stability, public fear, counterfeit risk, concentration danger, and the need to protect citizens from unverified private power. He never called me a criminal, he did not have to. And Kuroda's counsel argued that my collection required investigation because it may have been developed during company hours, using company information systems. It sounded reasonable if you did not know him. That was how Kuroda hurt people. He wrapped cruelty in language clean enough for a meeting room. When the review chair asked for my response, my hands were cold. For 1 second, I was back at the convenience store, unable to pay for ramen, everyone waiting for me to step aside. Then I opened the ledger. Case P1, I said, purchased from the Nishida estate sale 7 years before the marble standard. 32 purple marbles, 3 with crescent flaws, 1 with an air seed near the rim, photograph logged the same day. The photo appeared on the hall screen. Case P2, online hobby auction, 48 purple marbles, mixed shade, 2 chipped, purchased for less than a restaurant lunch because nobody wanted them. Another page, another photo, another receipt. The room shifted. Boredom became attention became understanding. I was not waving wealth around, I was proving time. Hana submitted the edited storage logs. We showed the original toner inventory. We showed the deleted message, where Kuroda asked whether hobby assets could be classified as company-developed property after sudden appreciation. The review chair asked him one question. Manager Kuroda, did you raise any ownership concern before the Marbles standard assigned value to marbles? He opened his mouth, closed it. The answer was no, and everyone heard it before he said anything. That should have been enough for personal victory. My ownership claim was strong. Kuroda's attack was collapsing. Even the guild began distancing itself from him. Then Kanzaki made his offer during recess, where the cameras could not hear. Accept protected holder status, he said. Your ownership will be recognized. Your living security will be guaranteed. Your lower-class access will be restored. In return, you suspend public petition rights until a full stability study is complete. A perfect cage. Gold bars, soft bedding, no visible lock. For a moment, I saw the life he offered. No rent fear, no Kuroda, no clerks asking me to step aside. I could eat anything, live anywhere, and never explain my worth again. All I had to do was leave the rules untouched for everyone still standing in lines with clear marbles. I looked at Hana. She would not choose for me, that was never her role. But I remembered what she had said. Because you remember what one clear felt like. We returned to the hall. Kanzaki expected compliance. The guild expected negotiation. Kuroda expected me to defend my fortune like a dragon in a small apartment. Instead, I activated the petition. The assembly hall screen flashed purple. Verified concentration holder petition accepted. Gasps moved through the room, and I spoke before Kanzaki could frame it. I am not petitioning to raise my conversion limit. I am not petitioning for private protection. I am petitioning for public authentication standards, anti-seizure limits requiring evidence before freeze expansion, and a challenge path for small holders whose old balances were erased while institutions converted first. Kanzaki's face changed by almost nothing. That almost nothing was the second best payoff of my life. The first was the silence after the blue marble. This was larger. This was an institution, realizing the quiet man had read the footnotes. The vote mechanism required Pinnacle weight to force temporary review. The exchange had designed it for banks, guilds, councils, and old holders who already spoke their language. He had not designed it for a man who bought unwanted purple marbles by the box and wrote down every flaw. My authenticated standing was enough to trigger public review. Other small Pinnacle holders began appearing on the board. Some abstained, some sided with the exchange, a few added their weight to mine. The petition crossed the emergency threshold by 14%. Not a revolution, not the end of the marble standard, but enough. The freeze expansion halted. Kuroda's company property claim was dismissed pending misconduct review. The exchange had to publish authentication criteria within 7 days. Smallholder challenge offices had to open in every district under public audit. Hanzaki remained calm because men like him survive by looking calm. But when the chair announced the result, Hana let out a breath behind me that sounded almost like a laugh. Protected status would have made me safe. This made me central. Every camera turned toward me, every faction recalculated, every hidden holder now knew my name. I looked down at the old ledger, at the handwriting of a man who cataloged worthless glass because he needed something in his life to make sense. Then I closed it. For the first time, I did not want the world to fear me. I wanted it to stop pretending ordinary people were worth nothing until a system stamped them valuable. The office was different after the hearing, not kinder, different. Kindness would have been too simple, and people are rarely simple after they realize they misjudge someone who now has power. Kuroda's name disappeared from the department approval chain by the end of the week. The official reason was procedural review. Everyone knew what that meant. He had not been beaten by a speech or a punch. He had been beaten by the same thing he once used against everyone else. Records. When he crossed the floor after that, conversations stopped in a new way. Not because people feared him, because they remembered the edited logs, the false claims, and the moment he could not answer one simple question. He called my name once across the department. Old reflexes moved through the room. People waited for me to lower my head. I looked up. That was all. Kuroda's mouth tightened, and he looked away first. No speech could have improved that moment. The contract workers' housing protection became a precedent under emergency review. The exchange narrowed the freeze on my accessible assets, and the audit seal on my door disappeared after the first public criteria release. My ownership was not perfectly safe. Nothing about my life would be perfectly safe again. But it was recognized. Because of the ledger, because of the receipts, because the quiet habits everyone mocked had become harder to dismiss than Kuroda's title. Coworkers changed, too. Some became polite with a desperation that felt worse than cruelty. Some apologized so vaguely they could pretend they had always been kind. Few avoided me completely because facing me meant facing themselves. One junior employee brought me tea and said, I should have spoken up before. I looked at him for a long moment. Yes, I said, but you can speak up next time. That was all I had to give him. I was learning that mercy did not mean pretending harm never happened. Hana stayed close to the work, not the praise. She helped set up a public record group for small holders challenging unfair conversion delays, and she refused any money I offered for it. Pay the filing fees, she said, not me. The Blue Vault Collector Guild released a statement supporting stability and transparency, which meant they had lost that round and wanted history to forget their hands were on the door. Hanzaki appeared on national feeds, calmly explaining that the exchange welcomed public confidence measures. He did not look defeated, that mattered. Kuroda had wanted my marbles. The guild wanted my inventory. Hanzaki wanted the rules, and he still had many of them. I had one enough to stand upright, not enough to stop watching the ceiling. That evening, I opened one black felt case and let the apartment light fall across the purple rose. They were still beautiful, still dangerous, still mine, but they no longer felt like proof that I mattered. That proof had to come from what I chose, when I could finally do more than survive. A week after the hearing, I went back to the same convenience store. The ramen shelf had been restocked. The price tag still showed one clear. I stood there longer than a cup of instant noodles deserved. The clerk recognized me this time. Public feed had shown my face only in formal clips, but the internet had already turned me into 10 different rumors. Hidden billionaire, marble hoarder, office revenge demon, pinnacle rebel. None of those names mattered as much as the clear marble I placed on the counter. One clear for ramen. The register chimed. This time the sound did not follow me like shame. Outside I ate on a bench near the station, steam warming my face in the evening air. Hana sat beside me with tea she had paid for herself, because that was the kind of boundary she treated like law. You are going to hate this, she said, looking at her phone. That has become your greeting. She turned the screen toward me. A sealed message from the Central Marble Exchange had arrived under a new header. International Pinnacle Coordination Council. Cross-border holder recognition, foreign exchange blocks, emergency vote consolidation, origin inquiry into the marble standard activation. At the bottom, one line pulsed in purple. Aoki Ren verified concentration holder. Attendance requested. This time I understood the language. Requested meant required. Somewhere beyond Japan, other holders were moving. Hidden families with purple keys. Councils that had known more than ordinary people from the beginning. Maybe even whoever decided that money should become glass overnight. My petition had not broken the marble standard. It had only made the first crack loud enough for the world to hear. I looked at the ramen, then at the marble pouch by my side, then at Hana. You do not have to come, I said. She gave me the look she used when a number on a spreadsheet insulted her. And let you read legal footnotes alone, you would become unbearable. For the first time in days, I smiled without checking who was watching. The world was still counting my purples. 8,472 remained unauthenticated, hidden in black felt cases and split across places only my ledgers could fully map. Enough wealth to tempt kings, enough authority to frighten governments, enough danger to make privacy impossible. But I was not the man at the register anymore. I was not the office joke, the silent target, or the lonely collector waiting for someone to admit that overlooked things had value. The world had changed its rules without asking me. Now I was going to learn who wrote them. And this time when the next gate opened, I would not be stepping aside.